Why don't we start with the antitrust, Lee, and then we can the stragglers catch up if there's any more.
All right, so the prohibited topics for meetings include pricing, markets, output, collective refusals to deal, strategic or business plans, and restricting competition. Discussion will be stopped and the matter returned to legitimate business if any of the prohibited topics listed above arise. If the discussion continues, the meeting will be stopped and the matter referred to legal counsel. Attendees should voice their concerns if improper discussions arise. If necessary, attendees should leave the meeting or request to have their objection and departure noted in the meeting minutes. These are the previous minutes. So I'll need a first and second approval.
Otto, would you do the honors, please?
I'll move that.
All right, and then is there a second a second person to approve?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Thanks for that. One quick follow-up on the last meeting. We did send out a survey on priorities. So this went out to all the members. I believe, Lee, do you know when that was? It was last week or it was in the last week or 10 days or so.
Uh, can't see the date right now. Okay.
So just while Lee's looking that up, it was a short survey asking what the membership's priorities are for
Yep, yep,
2026.
yep, yep. It was sent.
Um, well, we're gonna let that what's the word I'm looking for? We're gonna let it
Circulate.
yeah, there you go. And then we'll get back the next meeting once we have all the results. We'll also look at sharing it again just to make sure everybody's received it. So if you have received it, please fill it out. It literally we designed it so it's a 30-second survey. Um, just looking for again top priorities.
Yeah, I
Yep, it
did see,
was sent out February 3rd, so Tuesday last week that we sent it out.
There you go. Perfect.
and I did see some feedback on it this morning. So we're getting some input. So that's great.
Awesome. Um, so on that, let's switch gears a little. And yeah, we've got Brian Hansen from Quikserv. He is and Blaine Carter from True Building Solutions. Brian is out of sunny Port Moody, BC, not far from me actually. And Blaine is out of London, Ontario. They're going to give us a meeting today, a presentation on delivering safe and secure transaction systems. Um, I'll let Brian and Blaine go through it, but it's QSRs, quick service restaurants, but also pharmacies and other type of transactional retailers and whatnot. But with that, Lee, would you mind handing it over to Brian and take it away?
Yep. Brian, you can ask for the share. Okay.
Can everyone see my screen?
Looks good.
Yep.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you for everyone joining today. Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're at. My name's Brian Hansen, and as Rich mentioned, I work with Quikserv, and between my time with Quikserv and some of you may also know EasyServe, both manufacturers of pass-through and transaction window solutions. I've worked in the space for 10 years now. I'm the marketing director for Quikserv as well. And today I'm just going to give you kind of if you're not familiar with transaction systems, this is a great kind of crash course to teach you everything you need to know from available options, a little bit how they fit into the QSR space, to even like a little bit, we'll touch on installation. And alongside myself, also, we have Blaine Carter from True Building Solutions. So he's going to give a little bit of an introduction as to who they are and how they fit into this partnership in this presentation today.
So yeah, we're True Building Solutions. We are located in London, Ontario. Our business is we do image programs for quick serve restaurants, hotels, and other chain or franchise type businesses. So we have brought on the line of the quick serve windows. It fits very well into our portfolio. We do like architectural claddings, ceilings, FRP, and other products. And this is just a nice add-on. So we'll be distributing this window system throughout Canada. And we will be stocking certain SKUs also.
So it's a fantastic program that we've developed. And some of you, we actually had an announcement go this week with Glass Canada magazine. So there's a lot of synergies between our two companies. Quikserv and True Building Solutions have a lot of mutual customers. And when you get into like some of these QSR key accounts, a lot of them have a standardized design build that they build across the country. So it just makes sense from a logistics standpoint and distribution standpoint, for have a lot of their billing materials, including their transaction systems, locally available right here in Canada. So True Building Solutions is working with those key accounts and having those windows locally available for when these constructions are taking place. So it's a new partnership. So we're just in the early stage of developing partnership, developing the stock. True Building Solutions does have some stock that they're currently carrying, and then as demand continues, we're adding on queue accounts. More of those standard stock windows are going to be held in their distribution facility as well. So a little bit about what we're going to talk about today, our agenda. Like I said, I wanted to give a little bit of a crash course. Transaction windows are obviously something a little bit niche. And we'll talk about some of the scopes of transaction systems beyond even QSR. But first and foremost, we're always most well known in the QSR space because that's the biggest area where you need these kinds of solutions, and it's where everybody knows it. I know whenever I talk to someone who's kind of new to the space, it seems like Quikserv, sometimes it's just like on the tip of your tongue, like, why do I know that name? And then you mention to someone, next time you're at your favorite drive-through restaurant, look on the bottom of the window and you'll see our decal there at the bottom. And then the next time I talk to that person, they always point it out like, hey, I saw you guys. And then they never forget us after that. So we're going to talk a little bit about, what does it mean to be a transaction windows? How is that different from other operable windows that are available in the market space? We'll talk a little bit about the QSR space. We'll talk about different solutions that are available, and this is just for your reference. So if you have customers that are looking for different types of transaction systems, you kind of have a reference of what's feasible, what's available, what you can provide for your customers as well. So it's just to help you kind of understand the scope and the landscape of what you can do. We'll talk a little bit about air curtains, which are really critically important, especially in some areas in Canada in particular, especially when you get some cold climates. And then we're going to talk a little bit about installation best practices too. So what is a transaction window? What kind of separates it from your typical operable window? So one, it's robust, it's durable, reliable. They're really built to be tossed around. Like when you think about a QSR space, it's a pretty rugged environment. Some of them are serving hundreds of customers a day. So that window has to be open and closed hundreds of times a day. So it's very high volume, high number of transactions that they're serving. And some people don't realize this, that a lot of fast food restaurants, 70 to 80% of their total revenue comes out of the drive-through. That's how much, so that's all that business is coming through the drive-through window. So it's incredibly important that you have something that's robust and durable and reliable that you can use. And in that number for most businesses is even more since the pandemic. The QSR space has changed drastically since then, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit in further slides. But you start to get a grasp of why it's important to have something that's specifically built for transaction solutions. The other side of it is that they're also built for service, so they're operational on one side, and that also includes, like, aside from having a manually open window, you can have options where it has touchless controls, so it'll open and close automatically. Sorry, am I hearing a little bit of feedback?
Yeah, it's Paulo. Paulo, can you mute yourself?
I did it. It's okay.
Sorry, no problem at all. I didn't know if it was me that was causing the feedback or if it was someone else's microphone. So, and then the other component of it is sometimes there's local bylaws and these transaction windows need to comply with, and they need to be built to code. Most common, the only bylaw you run into, it might be that there's a requirement for self-closing. This is few and far between, but from time to time you run across it. There's actually bylaws that require a service window to be self-closing. So those are kind of some of the things that you run into in terms of like what's different. And in terms of like how Windows design, I'm not going to touch on this too much, but because it kind of builds on the last slide. But they're normally like a top hung and the easy to glide open and close type of style in terms of like how they're designed. That's specific to like the window that I'm showing here, which is a side sliding window. They usually have like strong locking mechanism, like an Adams right, which is very common industry standard that you also see on your doors front as well. And then they'll also have like large, easy to grab handles. And they'll have that self-closing operation, which is critical because when you're a fast working workspace like a fast food restaurant, sometimes it's pretty common if you don't have something that's self-closing, it's just going to remain open, which if anyone's lived in any major city in Canada where it's -40, no one wants that cold air coming in. So it's a pretty important function. And sometimes people ask, some people when they're looking at including a transaction window, I've talked to people that have asked, well, why can't I just put in like maybe a standard vinyl window? So you try to put in a standard vinyl window, they're not built for being open and closed hundreds of times a day, let alone the extremely rugged environment of a restaurant. When you think about a restaurant, not only are you dealing with the climate on the outside of the building, but you think about the inside of the building and all of the heat that's coming off of the equipment from your fryers or anything that like your grills or even like your common equipment. So there's a big influx of different climates and temperatures that you have to manage as well. So I've gotten that question a few times where some people have asked me like, oh, I can just go down to Home Depot, I'm just going to throw in like a vinyl window, and that's not going to last too long. You're going to find issues pretty quickly with something like that. So these are some of the traits and common design that you'll find in a transaction window. So coming to the QSR landscape, what really, when it comes to like, and I made this really specific to the glazing industry, what's great about getting into projects if you're not already working in this landscape, is that they typically have a tight turnaround. Most QSRs don't want a stretched out construction timeline. So they'll normally, from like start to finish, they'll close it off in 3 months, and they're getting better at like making it even quicker. So what's great from a glazer point of view, where you have projects where you have to pay upfront for the materials and labor, as opposed to like a long drawn out project, you get paid a little bit sooner. So it makes kind of cash flow pretty nice. It's also nice with QSRs because there's no one that you're going to have like one customer that's doing recurring projects and building new buildings every single year, like the QSRs do anyway. And aside from just doing the new builds that they do, they also do a lot of remodels. So typically most quick serve restaurants will do a rebranding or a refresh on their stores no longer than every 10 years. Like it's actually a stipulate for most of them because they don't want the brand to look stale. So normally within 10 years, they're going through and they'll run through a building, and it may require like replacing some of the windows, some of the doors, and some of the transaction windows. And just in general, when I'm going through this slide, I'm not referring to the QSR landscape in terms of like, your scope of work isn't just include the transaction window. There's a nice chunk of storefront work and doors that need to be installed as well. So it's a nice size, they're nice size projects. And then the other side of it is that there's service work, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later. But if there's anything that's needed in terms of like, you're always going to have issues where maybe someone tries to break into the building and maybe the glass needs to be repaired, or there's repairs. Especially, we build a pretty robust system, as they're meant to be. But when you get into automatic windows and electronic systems, like, issues happen from time to time. So sometimes service work's required, or even just doing regular maintenance on them. And the last point is that fast food restaurants are always growing. They're always growing. They're expanding and adding new restaurants every year. And it's a recession-proof business, because normally in a recession, what happens is that people tend to turn away from eating out at luxury restaurants and high-end restaurants, and they tend to spend a little bit more at the fast food, trying to cut back on their budget. So in a way, it's almost like a recession-proof business. We typically, when there's a recession going on, a lot of times we see our business increase, and the QSRs are doing either more investment on new builds, or they're doing remodels as well. So the QSR as an industry and what's changing in this landscape. So as I mentioned previously, like everything, COVID-19 and the pandemic really turned things around for the fast food industry. No one wants to remember the time where we had to keep a distance from everyone and couldn't go into restaurants, or there was very limited seating, things of that nature. But what happened after the end of the phase was that in the QSR industry, they realized where they had a lot of restaurants, they had to close their dine-in eating areas, and they could just focus on drive-through. It was a lot more efficient. They didn't have to have as much manpower that was handling the orders in the restaurant, or doing the cleanup of the dining areas, or even the washrooms themselves. And they realized, oh wow, this is actually fantastic. All I have to do is focus on like one line of throughput, one line of service. And they realized, like, taking orders on the go is, as it became adopted more widely in the pandemic, it kind of stuck with society. Now people want to take their food on the go. So there's an expansion in terms of how they're building restaurants, and a shift where they're focusing more on the takeout delivery. So that means that there's more takeout windows for whether it's the drive-through or for walk-up service, especially if it's in a restaurant with high pedestrian traffic that's walking by, or for catering to the delivery services like your Uber Eats or your Skip the Dish. Those are an important part of their business too. And so now you have multiple service points that you need to service, and they all need to service quickly and have access points to do it. So there's a lot more volume of transaction windows that are needed too. And in terms of like designing the QSRs now, they have actually started making a lot of the dining areas 30% smaller, and just focusing a lot more on those takeout options. And now you see anytime you go for fast food now, they've got curbside pickup. They've got a lot more of the mobile ordering. They've got separate pickup windows, whereas you used to always have like just one pickup window. Now you have two, or standard might be three even windows, and that's so they can handle higher volumes of customers or those delivery drivers like we were talking about. So it's really changed quite a bit in terms of like how they're designing and how they're serving customers in the QSRs. But on the flip side, going aside from QSRs, transaction windows are literally anywhere where customers need to be serviced in a secure and friendly manner. So aside from the fast food restaurants, you can see any type of transaction window, whether it's an operable window or something like a fixed window, like a ticket window in government facilities. We do a lot of work in Canada with some of the hospitals. We provide pass-through windows into the sterile environments. So we make a standardized windows that goes into those environments so they can pass anything that's in the hospital that needs to be sterilized. It gets passed through our windows and put into a sterilization area, and then it gets passed out through a controlled area as well. So that's an area that's growing as well, and that's an area where we actually have a lot of development into new solutions for that, because especially in Canada, there's more restrictions in regulations on how that controlled area needs to be maintained between the sterile side of the hospital and what they call like the dirty side, the non-sterilized side. And then also you see like these types of windows for pharmacies, convenience stores, schools are starting to have more reception windows. I mean, normally, we're not typically prone to having these kind of security needs in Canada, but as we just saw this week up in Tumbler Ridge, unfortunately, more and more we're starting to see in areas that people are looking at beefing up security. So having reception windows in areas where anyone can walk in, a stranger or can walk into a building. You want to make sure that people in the front line, there's protected area, there's screening, and you have something that's going to have some kind of forced entry or even ballistic rating, glass system or complete solution. And you can get into sports venues is another facility, and toll booths. So some of the projects, just to name a few, like BC Ferries is another. That's one of our regular customers. We do a lot of their transaction windows for any of where they have their ferry stations set up, and where you have to go and pay and you get on the ferry. A lot of those windows we actually supply those, and then we're actually working on the project right now at St. Paul's, the new hospital that's being built here in Vancouver. So just to name a few, like I just wanted to earmark that. Everywhere you go, you can see these types of transaction solutions. It's not just the QSR, although it tends to be the first one that comes to mind all the time. So I just wanted a couple pictures. We got drive-through windows, we got walk-up windows, and walk-up windows are starting to become a trend too. They're becoming really popular. So a couple different types of transaction systems that you typically find are available. So you typically have your assembled versus your knockdown system. So the difference between those is that your assembled it's all factory built, it's pre-inspected. So when it gets on site, it's ready to go. It's ready to be installed. That's for a lot of customers, that's the preferred type of solution that people like. Because first, if something comes on site and it still needs to be assembled, you could run into issues where there's a quality issue or there's parts missing. And especially when you have a tight turnaround of only 3 months for a project, you don't want anything slowing you down. So if you have something that comes on site, assembled, ready to install, it just speeds up your processes and speeds up the construction delivery time. So what are some different types of transaction systems? As everyone knows, when you look at the top left, a lot of people are familiar with that side sliding window. That's our most common style of window that you'll see in the market. But then there's also like a vertical type windows that are available. Those are great for situations where someone has maybe a very narrow service area or a narrow area where they need to fit a window. The vertical windows are also where what we build for use in those sterile environments. Typically, we build them with like a stainless steel shelf base, so that way it's easy to place items on top of them and pass items through the window. And then you get into things like your ticket windows and your baffle windows. Everyone knows the ticket window, but these are where you get into something a little bit more closed off and secure, and they can be made with some kind of forced entry glazing or ballistic rated glazing as well. And then moving through, you have combination units, which are a combination of a fixed glass system with a drawer underneath for passing items through. These are popular where you see a lot of these in typical like government facilities or possibly like a pharmacy. Pharmacies use combination units very commonly. And then you also have like package receiver and transaction drawers, which are just other means of passing items through. Transaction doors, I think anyone's seen these. These are pretty common at your C stores or convenience stores, especially if we're after hours service. It's another means that maybe they want to close the store and only have like a transaction door, a package receiver available to pass items through if they have late night customers. So those are the general categories, and then getting into more your operational windows, and I won't dive on this too much. There's a lot of different styles and models that are available too. So anything from like touchless automatic, and a lot of fast food restaurants love automatic windows because when you're dealing in a fast-paced environment and you got drinks in one hand, food in the other, it's great to just walk up to the window, it opens on its own, you hand the food out, you take a step back and it closes on its own. So it doesn't require any kind of intervention at all to be able to operate the window. So aside from the automatic, and then you have semi-automatic or self-closing, and you have biparting windows as well. And you can get ones that are projected as windows that stick out from the side of the building. Projected, a lot of people like them for two reasons. One, they used to be very popular back when drive-thrus were starting to pick up steam back in like 70s, 80s, because people like that. People used to buy them with the intention of like, oh, it'll stick out from my building, so people will know I have a drive-through. But nowadays, most fast foods have a drive-through, so that's not really the purchasing intention these days. More so, it's why people like them is they have a built-in shelf on them. So if you're a high-volume store, it's great because you can line up your prepared orders. So if you've got people in line and you got their order already, you can put it right in front of the window and it's ready to just pass through. So that's the main reason why people like the benefit of that projected window. They're a much larger window. They've got that built-in shelf. And then you get into different types of concession windows as well, and your air curtains. And we'll talk about air curtains a little bit more. And on the other side, from your operable windows, when you're looking at beefing up and stepping up something on like the secure side, you get into your ticket windows, and these can come in a variety of sizes and different communication devices. The ones with the natural speaker you see very common anywhere. Those ones they're always great in anywhere, especially if you have more of an ambient environment where it's not too much background traffic, especially with zip doors, or it's somewhere indoors where there's not a lot of commotion going on. But if you do have that, you have a lot of background noise, and something with an amplified speak through is highly recommended. So make sure there's clear communication between the service attendee and the customers. And then you get into like a baffle window, which are great because they're very customizable. And they can be, they just have a thin frame around them. So they're great because you have that clear, transparent communication between the customer and the receptionist on the other side, without any kind of obstruction. So just makes a little bit more of a friendlier, welcoming style of window, which are becoming more and more popular, you'll see. And then you have ticket windows, which are with a variety of style of different operable windows built into them too, and mainly with the purpose of or intention of being able to pass items through it, whether it be papers or materials that need to be shared. We've done a few projects even in downtown Vancouver where they needed ticket windows with an operable window. They do them in some of the health facilities where they need to do like a needle exchange. So they have to have a small window that they can pass through needle. So it's, you run into any kind of different style of like need and requirement with these types of windows. So then when you get into like, if I'm talking to Glaziers here, I'm not going to spend too much on the side, but these are common terms that we use when we're talking about different parts of the window. And I also use this window to talk about, what you can do in terms of customization. So you can have the window by itself. And then, a lot of times, most of the time, that's how the window is ordered, with the window by itself. But we have some customers, like key accounts, that they like to have an integral unit with a side light or transit built into it. And it mainly comes down to aesthetics, is that they want just a single mullion between the window and those other those glass pieces that are going to be around it. Aside from that, like if they want glass either on the side of the window or the top of it, a lot of times we'll recommend to them, order just the window by itself and then have your local glazer put in the glass around it. So it's a little bit more work for you guys to do. and it's not something. I mean, our area specialty is really the operable style of window, right? So, um, and then so that's just to mention that a little bit in terms of how these windows are typically you come across them. So slide direction, this may come across as like really common sense, but it's actually the number one issue we have is people order the wrong slide direction. So when you have those sliding windows, because they're top hung, they're always designed so that they either open from the left to the right or the right to the left. They don't they're not bi-directional, so they don't open slide both ways. So it's very important to have the right slide direction, obviously, and it's critically important from a restaurant point of view because typically they want whatever side's going to open close to where the cashier is going to be or where a table is going to be where they're have their ready items that they're passing through the window. But the disconnect comes with between manufacturers and architects because typically an architect they always will specify a slide direction from the exterior elevation of the window, whereas a manufacturer a lot of times when you're ordering a window it's referenced from the interior of the building. So a lot of times there can be a disconnect there. So we always make sure if you're looking after an order for a customer, always make sure you understand where that slide direction is being referenced from, if it's interior or exterior. Or if you're seeing a diagram where it says X and O, make sure you always clarify if it's not already clear on the diagram. Am I looking at the interior or the exterior? Because otherwise it's going to be a grave mistake if you don't have the slide direction for your correct slide direction for your project. So next few slides are a bit air curtain. So as I mentioned previously, these are critically important in a lot of areas, especially when you have the freezing cold out. There's a number of benefits that they give. So in terms of like air management inside a building, I think a lot of this is kind of common sense, but I'll go through it a little bit. But when you think about the location of a window, especially it's got in a drive-through, you've got cars sitting outside idling, and you've got all those emissions coming out of the car. So having an air curtain is a way, from a sanitation purposes, of keeping we'll call it the dirty air, the emissions, outside of the building, and then making sure it's not ruining the food on the inside of the building. Aside from another number of other items that you may not want infiltrating the building as well. So it can also be a temperature control as well. So this is the most common. So I'm sure everyone on this call has been entered a department store or a grocery store, and you walk in, you feel that big blast of air when you walk in, and that's that air curtain hitting you. And the primary purpose of those is just as a thermal control. So you're not spending as much money on either your air conditioning or your heating and maintaining the temperature inside the building. So it's a very effective means of having these air curtains just shooting in a steady airstream. And it's really important that with the air curtains, a lot of people will just put something like a blower, something that blows air above there, but really you need something that's going to put out a high velocity air that's going to act as that invisible shield. Some people overlook that aspect and they'll just put any kind of blower up there. Well, that's not going to effectively work as a barrier to keep out any kind of contaminants or work as a thermal barrier. So you really need something that's going to be high volume and high velocity air, and then also have that, especially in Canada where you have cold temperatures, you have that thermal output as well. And also that's going to be strong enough to keep out pests. So on this slide as well, like trying to keep out insects. Whenever I see this slide, I always think about Ontario, especially in southwestern Ontario. Anyone who's been there in the month of June, they have June bugs that come out, and you could not even imagine, unless you've witnessed yourself, how many there literally are. There are literally millions in the air, and so much so that when you're driving down the road, you can hear them crunching under your tires. It's crazy. If you've never experienced it, it's something to witness. Well, or maybe not, but. But whenever I see this slide, I always think of that. And when we've spoken to, a lot of customers in that area in Ontario, it's like when you just mentioned that 1 month, like June, you get the June bugs out, and it only lasts for like a week or so. But as I just mentioned, you can imagine how big of an issue is. You can't have all those flies coming into the buildings right into the area because you're preparing the food right next to where this window is located. So it's actually a pretty critical issue for some areas. So a couple other pro tips on air curtains. So they do come in heated or unheated. As I said, like heated, this is going to be majority. Almost every city should have a heated air curtain in Canada, not only for all the reasons I just mentioned, like thermal control, pest control, air quality, also just like for the comfort of employees. I mean, the employees, if you have a busy environment and that window's being open all day long, it can be pretty chilling for them to be sitting by that window. It can be pretty cold with that cold air just blowing in. So it's and not only and also the equipment that you have nearby the window too. I've actually had issues with customers where they had an issue with their air curtain and it was their equipment was malfunctioning because it was so cold. It was -40, and they were starting to have problems with their refrigerator because it was located like right near where the door was or right near the window was. So um I feel like air curtains are sometimes overseen as something like it's like a perk or like a plus, but it actually can be pretty critical for some areas. And then normally in terms of like installing these, you want to install these directly over where your service opening is. So where your door opens. A lot of times we'll see people where they'll install them and they'll put them right in the middle of like a side sliding window. So half of it is over where the window opens and the other half of it is sitting over like where the fixed panel is, where it doesn't open at all. So it's really wasted air. It's not doing serving any purpose at all. So you want the entire air curtain, and also you want to make sure you have the appropriate width of an air curtain that's going to span the entire width of that window service opening. And the last point on this was in installing air curtains too is you always want to make sure that it's actually not installed in front of the header of the window. Logistically, it would make sense to install it directly over where your service opening is. But in this more pertains to where you have an automatic, like an electric window, because if you need to dismount that air curtain, you would need an electrician to do that. So you're gonna have to call an electrician, disconnect the air curtain in order for you to have access to the service panel in the window if for any reason like there's an issue with the window or you're doing routine maintenance on it. So especially in an electric window, you always want to make sure that you're installing that actually above the window itself. So types of glazing. So just a couple points on glazing. I don't think I can teach anyone here about glazing too much. I'm sure you all know more than I do. But there are different options available. Most commonly, you find transaction windows that are built with 1/4-inch tempered glass or 1-inch insulated glass. That's kind of your most common options. A lot of people will even still today, even with the rising importance of like climate change and energy conservation, you'll still find a lot of people that are still will mandate one having a 1/4-inch glass, and they for a service window, it's just a small portion of their overall building side, and they also see it as well. I'm opening that window all day long anyway, so it's not really an effective means of energy conservation anyway. So you just want to make sure. I always recommend for people in Canada, always make sure you're getting a window insulated unit. It's critically important in Canada. So, and you can also, in addition to insulated glass, low E is also an option. You can get all kinds of different variable glass. If you wanted some kind of tint on it too, or some kind of custom option, or like a spandrel, that's feasible too. We do that all the time. And then some windows, like especially when you're getting more into your fixed windows, which we discussed, not maybe your operable windows, but your fixed windows, like your ticket windows, there's impact glazing that's available or ballistic rated. And there's a variety of different glass available. There's not a one solution fits all when you get into like ballistic rated solutions, especially very high level, but like if you're looking at something where you want interior ballistic protection, normally you'll see an acrylic or a polycarbonate on a transaction system. But when you're getting into something more of an exterior application, that's where you see more of something like that's all glass or a glass clad polycarbonate. And when you get in those higher levels of ballistic rating, you also want to make sure your system, like your frame itself, is also ballistic rated. And also that if you're like getting into higher levels, you need something that's going to have a system that can carry the thicker glazing that comes with that higher ballistic rating too. Because there is different levels of ballistic rating. So there's not just again, one solution fits all. They follow a standard called UL752, which has 8 different levels. From a level 1 is a 9mm handgun, and level 3 the 44 Magnum. So levels 1 to 3 are handguns, and then beyond that, levels 4 through 8 or your high power rifles. So just to keep in mind, it's not something we see too much, but it's been growing every year. We see more and more of the impact rated and the ballistic rated type of glazing that's required. So, and aside from custom glazing solutions, there's all kinds of different things we can do in terms of like custom options you can get on these windows too. You can get a lot of different custom sizes. You can get custom colors. You can have it painted, different custom anodized aluminum colors if you needed. We talked about glass. If you need ballistic rated, insulated, low E, tinted, that's Bob's your uncle. Anything and everything under the sun is pretty much available. Depending on the style of window, there may be some limitations on some different models. Because of the sashes that in the way the windows are designed, some of them there's a limitation on the thickness we can do, but for most of the window models available, we have a lot of different custom options for your customers. So so now getting into transaction window installation tips. So as you can imagine, it's pretty simple. If you install the window, a transaction window, especially a manual one, it's no different. It's a pretty plug and play. We try to keep a plug and play mentality for the most part. The only thing that a lot of people ask about is like, okay, well, how high do I install this window? It's obviously going to be more important because of the nature of how it's being used, serving cars in a drive-through. So most areas we recommend a height of 32 to 36 inches. And that can, most of the time, like 32 or 34 is common. The only areas where you get something higher is you needed to take into consideration, like, what's the type of people that are coming through the drive-through. So potentially if you're more of an area where maybe it's more industrial, or maybe it's a small town where there's a lot of people that are driving high-sitting trucks as opposed to low-sitting cars, then that comes into consideration and you'll see more like installed at a higher elevation height. But that's just to give you an idea. A general range is 32 to 36 inches. 34 is probably most common. And that's from the ground level from where the car sits. If there's a sidewalk that's in front of it, you don't measure from there as well. So, and that you can even apply that to even a walk-up window too. So, and then another note I've gotten here is like air curtains. They are connected with a direct electrical connection. So if you're not an electrician by any means, and typically what happens is like we'll have a glazier will install the window, and sometimes an electrician, which normally they're on site anyway as part of the construction, so they just need to hook up the power. So it's pretty common. From time to time, you also run into some windows that are designed just to keep an eye out for this. Sometimes automatic windows are not powered electrically. They have a pneumatic design, so they actually have an air line that powers it. Sometimes not a fantastic design, especially in Canada, because you need to adjust the compression levels as the seasons change, when it gets colder and when it gets hotter. But just to keep an eye on that in case you see that as well, so you know if you need something that's powered electrically or pneumatic. So installing these windows, these are very general guidelines, but typically, like when you look at a side sliding window or a lot of the windows we designed, the core frame depth is 4.5 inches, same size as your window or your wall frame depth. And then normally we would recommend making your rough opening about 3/8 of an inch larger. When you get into like a larger window, which maybe has built-in transoms or side lights, you might want to make that rough opening a little bit larger just to give you a little bit more wiggle room in fitting it in, like maybe go up to a 1/2 inch. But normally for most windows, we just say 3/8 of an inch, and it comes down to sometimes like what you're comfortable with, because you're the one that also needs to seal it around at the edge too. So you don't want that edging to look too big, because then you gotta have to put a lot more sealant around it. It doesn't look as nice aesthetically. So again, I'm not teaching you guys anything you already don't know, I'm sure, but and level installation is very important with these windows, because whether you're dealing with an automatic window or most importantly, when you have a self-closing window, a lot of the self-closing side transaction windows are gravity fed. So it's basically the way they designed it is they're sitting on a rail that's on an angle. So if that window is meant to self-close, if that window is not installed level, it's not going to self-close, especially if it's sitting to one side and it's not level, it's not going to self-close at all. It's going to stay open. Or if it's sitting too much to the other side, it might close a little bit too fast and could be a safety concern as well. So just a couple things to look out for and watch out for when installing these, and a few little tips and tricks. So I mentioned earlier about service. So, as you've probably gotten the idea, some of these windows, especially when you get to the electronic windows, there's a little bit more to them than a typical manual window that you install, like a typical manual vinyl window. So we do work with a nationwide network of technicians across Canada. So we have people in all areas that if something comes up where there's a warranty issue that comes up, or there's some kind of issue where maybe the glass needs to be replaced because it happened many times, a car is driven into it. Then we do have people that we can call on that can help your customers to repair it. And if anyone's interested in being part of our service network, we're always happy to open that discussion too. If you're interested in being someone in a particular area in Canada that we can call on when we need support with warranties or someone needs service work, we always like to have someone that we can refer to customers. Like if someone calls up and maybe they want to replace their window, we're manufacturers only, we don't do installation. So it's always nice when they can call us up and we can refer to someone who does good quality work, like yourselves. So we always appreciate that. And if you're interested in that, reach out and we're happy to have a discussion about that with you. But that is the end of my presentation. I hope you learned something at least over the course of the presentation. But if anything comes up or you have any questions at all, I'm happy to field them now. I've also got my email and phone number on the screen if you want to jot them down. I'm always open to if you want to give me a shout or drop me an email and ask me any further questions you have in the future.
You got 10 more minutes, Brian.
Oh, I had a song and dance prepared. Should I just break
maybe a
into
song,
that,
that'd
or?
be nice. Hey, Brian, I may have missed a little bit of that. What about the testing and requirements for things like durability? Is there any certifications involved when it comes to serve windows? Like what do you have to go through to be qualified to
So
produce? So
there isn't, I would say for the most part, there isn't any kind of like certification. I mean, we've many times it's come up about getting our like NFRC rating, but at the end of the day, a lot of people just don't find it critical because it's counterintuitive to have something that's has an NFRC rating when all you're doing is opening it up all day, like you're opening and
yeah,
closing all
yeah,
day. When you
for
get
sure.
into particular regions, not so much applicable in Canada, like in the States, you get more into like a lot more of codes, whether it's like California has a service opening code, so it has to be built to a particular code in terms of like how big your service opening can be. There's also areas around Florida where they have to be Miami-Dade impact rated, so you have to have
Yeah,
windows
yeah,
that are tested for water infiltration, impact tested, so they basically load up a can with a 2x4 and shoot it at your window to make sure it can withstand the impacts
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah,
from hurricanes. But aside from that, no, there isn't any kind of like, I mean, obviously, like our electric windows, they need to be tested to make sure they comply with local regulations.
yeah,
But in terms of manual windows, no, there isn't any kind of testing required
yeah, yeah.
or
Now,
regulations.
are they bought like as a kit? Can anybody, are you a dealer to people? Can they just buy the kits and install them, or is it something that is handled by your company?
We don't have an authorized dealer network. Anyone can call us up and order a window. I mean,
Okay.
we get people who you get those people who own restaurants and they're do it themselves type of people, right? So they
Yeah.
can call us up, order a window for the restaurant, and yeah, we accept orders from anyone and everyone.
Okay. And is there
Yeah.
much to like when talking about sort of your basic vertical slide serve window, like does it come just pop it in, or is there, some
Yeah, I mean,
assembly required or?
no, there's no assembly really required when if you're talking about, a manual, let's say a manual self-closing window, it's got the pre-drilled holes on it usually. So it's a matter of just you pop it in your rough opening, and then you secure it with the 4 bolts, and then you seal around the edges, obviously, to make sure there's no water infiltration, and you're off to the races. You're good to go, just like you
Wow,
you
okay.
would most types of windows.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, Brian, where it's Ottawa Garibaldi here. Where are these manufactured?
These are manufactured out of Quikserv facility in the US, in Houston.
Okay, so they're custom made to suit custom order, or they're standard sizes?
So we have a stock load of over 50 different window models that we keep in stock of our most common window models, and then we do a lot of custom uh, options as well. So it's almost down the middle. It's a mix of both in terms of like the standard windows that we carry in stock and the number of custom windows that people order. Because a lot of
Okay.
times, like with the custom, the biggest obstacle with the custom is sometimes people are going into a space and maybe there's already an existing hole and they need just to fill that hole of the window, and then that's when they need a custom size. That's the most common. Aside from that, you get your aesthetics where people need something that maybe a custom paint job or something that fits with the overall design of the building. But most commonly, it's like why people order custom is typically a size that they want.
Okay. Are there code requirements for like minimum sizes, that kind of thing, or anything like that, or is it just common design
Uh,
sense?
Not, I mean, it's more comes down to like our limitations from a manufacturing point, how small you'd want to make it or what makes sense. So we do have
Okay.
some, yeah, limitations on like how small we can actually make a window, but there's no regulations or anything. Not here anyway. Like the only area where they have regulations on that is, yeah, in the US, in the state of California. They have regulations on your service opening can be no bigger than 216 square inches with an air curtain, or without an air curtain, or 240 square inches if you do have an air curtain. Pretty strict. You can imagine California has a lot of regulations for a lot of red tape
Yeah.
around everything. So
Yeah. All right. And then what kind of lead times are custom manufactured ones?
depending on the nature of the lead time of the custom, but right now it's 6 weeks for customs.
Okay.
If you're getting something where there's a very specialty type of glass, depending on the lead time on sourcing it, might be a little bit longer. But for the most part, yeah, we're running 6 weeks on customs right now.
Thanks.
Are the frames thermally broken?
They're not thermally broken, no.
Okay.
Yeah, we've talked about doing it, but it's one of those things. Again, it comes back to whether it makes sense, since
Yeah, it's open all the time
their
anyway.
purpose
Yeah,
is to be
I
open.
get you, but yeah, interesting. Okay.
Hey Brian, it's Rick here from Northern. Do you also do like interior sliding reception windows and stuff like that?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
So, like some of the ticket window styles that I had shown in the presentation, they can be made with a fixed window and a side sliding underneath, whether you want it to open vertically or horizontally. Or you can or even those side sliding windows that we use for a drive-through. Some people use those internally as well.
Okay, yeah, I'm just working on a job right now, so I'll send you an email after this and you can take a look at these custom sliders that they're looking at. So,
Sure, yeah, send them over to me. I'd be happy to take a look.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Interesting. Who knew there was so many details around these?
Yeah.
I know.
I just get
It's
my
funny.
coffee. I just get
So
my coffee from it. I mean, what do I know?
You bring me back to like 10 years ago when I started in this space. And I remember my first day walking in the door and thinking, like, how much can there possibly be to really
Yeah.
learn about a transaction window? And I was quickly proven incorrectly that there's
Yeah.
more than you think, actually.
Yeah. Famous last words. How hard can this be? Yeah,
Exactly.
totally. I totally get it.
A couple quick questions. Yeah, and great presentation, Brian. You're definitely a pro on this. Is the air curtains, they run all the time, or are they activated when you open the window up?
Great question. Very good question. So, depends on the air curtain. So you can have them designed so that they have a micro switch installed, and these can be designed on either even a manual window or an automatic window, so that they're on a relay, so that it'll automatically open when the window opens and close when the window closes, which I would highly, highly recommend, because you really don't want that air curtain running 24/7. And a lot of the windows that we stock are actually already built in with that micro switch too. Like our window, one of our popular windows is the IFC 4040, which is one of the windows that True Building Solutions is carrying. They have the micro switch. They're going to have the micro switch on them so that you can just hook up an air curtain and it'll enable it to turn on and off with the window opening. Good question.
And one more, real quick,
And
then
they,
we have to.
sorry, one other comment on that too is they also have a rheostat on them, so they will automatically turn on, and then they will stay on until whatever the set temperature is meant to be, and then they'll turn off. So sometimes they will stay on longer than the window is open, but it's only because of the rheostat that's set on them, so they need to reach the desired temperature.
Makes sense. Real quick, and then we're gonna have to wrap pretty quick. The ticket windows and baffle windows, I know you went through the glazing on a lot of these different systems, but are they inherently security rated glazing that goes in there, or is there non-security?
Yes.
Well,
Yes, typically, yeah. I mean, the intention typically for those where the application where they're being used at is some kind of forced entry or ballistic protection. So inherently, they're almost always built with either an acrylic or like a polycarbonate, which gives you that typically level 1 or level 3 protection, which level 1 again is 9mm handgun, or level 3 is 44 Magnum.
fantastic. Any other questions before we wrap? Going once, going twice? Well, thank you very much, Brian. Thanks to Blaine also for joining us. That was great.
Yeah,
You know,
really interesting.
uh,